Hello and welcome to the Wild Tales podcast. I am your host, Mike Bona. Thank you for tuning in again, and thank you to all my new listeners, which, surprisingly to me, I have quite a few of. So I would like to take an opportunity now just to kind of reintroduce myself for those who may be new to listening to the podcast. I am your host, Mike Bona. I have spent over 20 years working with exotic animals as a zookeeper and conservationist, with a particular passion for giraffes. I work closely with the Giraffe Conservation Foundation in Africa, and I also love sharing incredible animal stories with all of you, which was the inspiration for this podcast, Wild Tales. Today, I am thrilled to chat with my longtime friend, Chris Mortensen. Chris is the host of the All Creatures podcast, a podcast which I highly recommend, especially episode 228, where his guest was me, Mike Bona. But all of them are great. It's just a fascinating podcast to listen to every week. They focus on a new species of animal, and they just delve deep into each species, and you learn so much information. I recommend every episode. I know most people might be attracted to the big, exciting animals they have on their podcast, the giraffes, the lions, elephants, the big ones. But I recommend, if there's a species you're not quite familiar with, or maybe you never heard of, give it a listen. Learn something new. There's some fascinating animals out there that a lot of people are not aware that they exist. But you can learn about them on the All Creatures podcast. And Chris and his co-host Angie do a great job talking about each species on each episode. So he was a great guest. It was great catching up with him. We chatted for a long while before I even hit the record button. So I'm excited to share our conversation with you. So let's dive into this episode of Wild Tales. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Chris Mortensen. Well, enough chit-chat, just the two of us. We have a podcast to record, so let's get into it. Chris Mortensen,
Okay.
Thanks for joining the Wild Tales podcast. You are the co-host of the I'm Wild Tales. Let me get this straight. You're the co-host of the All Creatures podcast. So you've been going on forever. How many episodes do you have now?
Oh, geez. We 480 something episodes. And of that, probably like 30 of them are repeats, 30 or 40, because that's a new thing. That's a thing now when you've been around for so long. And then I would say out of the species, I haven't done a count lately, but we're probably near 200 species at least, and then close to 180 interviews. So over 200 species we've covered, interviewed people from all over the planet, working in conservation, people you've introduced me to. We've been busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, that many episodes, but I hear your podcast peaked at episode 228 when you interviewed Mike Bona.
That guy? Oh, yeah. Whatever happened to that guy? I don't know that guy. I've met him somewhere. No, yeah, that was.
I don't think it's gotten better since. That was
no.
Should have just wrapped it up at the end.
Yeah, I think it peaked at episode 1, and then no, it's going strong, and we're committed to it. I mean, it's just a passion project of ours. It's not our day jobs. Both Angie and I are very busy educators, scientists, and we just love the All Creatures podcast. That's like our downtime. But we have to do the research on the species we cover, or I have to read a whole book when I'm interviewing authors and do our homework. But when we record, it's just like, people don't know this, but Angie, like you and I were chit-chatting for at least a good half hour. We talk for like a solid hour about life, everything going on. Oh, we better record for another hour. Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah. It's my bestest friend in the whole world. She's amazing.
Yeah,
Next
that's
to my
what we're
wife.
just doing. We're just chatting forever about everything. But I haven't talked to you in forever because I used to see you from time to time, but you bailed, you left the country. You live in New Zealand now.
Yeah, it was something called COVID happened too. So don't forget that. I got stuck in New Zealand. So
we all talked about going to New Zealand. You're the only one that actually did it.
Yeah, that's a long story, but no, I actually did. I did make it into New Zealand during COVID. My kiddos were stuck here with my ex-partner, and I was stuck in the UK with my current partner, and I was very lucky. I was one of the very few that got in during the border closings, and I did my 2 weeks in prison in quarantine in a lovely hotel in Rotorua in New Zealand, and it was awesome. I mean, no masks for about 6 months, no COVID. We were safe, and then we weren't, and then it made it in the country, and then we had our lockdowns. Mike, sorry, I could go on all day, but I was actually locked down in 3 countries. I was locked down just south of you in Orange County, and then I got on an airplane, flew to England to be with Pippa. I was locked down in the UK, and then I flew to New Zealand, and then finally when COVID hit there, I was locked down there. So it was a journey, wasn't it? Oh gosh.
Well, hopefully we're all through with the lockdowns now.
Yes, that's won't come back. Won't come back. But I did. I did miss hanging out with you at the zoo. That was fun.
Yeah, me too. But we'll get you back.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back.
All right. So, hey, it's Wild Tales. This is a storytelling podcast, and you do so much research for yours. I don't know how you do it. Different species every week. You do all your homework. I just turn on the microphone and start talking. I make it so much easier on my end.
Yeah. Okay. I am a nerd. So you can call me a nerd. I got my PhD in animal physiology. I love learning. And, I did, when I was in academia, I was a professor at the University of Florida. I did do some work with elephants, African and Asian, some manatee work, rock hyrax work. I was trying to get into Somali wild ass work, white rhino work, while I was doing some domestic animals. And I've always had this bug about, endangered species and helping. So when the idea of the podcast came around, Angie was finishing up her PhD with me. And I said, I want to do this podcast. And I'll tell you what, spending the hours it takes to prepare is so fascinating. You learn about the animal's history, you learn about their physiology, then we always look at their conservation, what's being done. So there's a lot of good stories out there. You know this. You've interviewed or worked with all those conservation experts out in the field. I mean, you introduced me to Ian. I mean, I love telling that story about the mountain frog in Southern California that nobody knows about, and all the work that the LA Zoo was doing. So I meet all these interesting people, but then we tell the animal story. So, why should we care about what is it, the southern yellow-legged mountain frog, or that's like critically endangered in the mountains above your house? And all these animals, you learn so much about them, and you can't help but fall in love. So yeah, it's a passion. It absolutely is.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you learn about animals that, as a listener, that you may have little knowledge about. They're so kind of obscure, and even yourself, you have a broad knowledge of so many species. I know even you come across a species like, I know nothing about this animal. Like, I learned so much.
Oh, so many. Like, and the thing is, there's only so much room in your brain. I have discovered that in academia, I can only stuff so much information in my head. But if I go back and if I just have to look through my notes real quick on a species we covered, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this, and oh yeah, I remember that. How do you say it? Ilya pica, the one that looks like the Ewok. Do you see the photos in China? Like, I knew nothing about pikas. I didn't know that, they have to live at 20,000 feet or whatever, and climate change is going to kill them all because it's going to get too hot. Like, sorry, that's a bad fact, but they're so amazing. And then you find out in California, we have pika. I never knew what the heck it's, this rodent. I didn't know anything about it. Moose. Here's a fact. Here's a fact that sticks out to me. I got many, but this one.
I love moose. Go shoot.
Yeah, moose don't sweat. I didn't know that. They don't sweat. Yeah, and if to cool off, to thermoregulate, because again, the physiologist in me, how does their body system do that? They go stand and with their hooves and legs in cold water and streams and lakes to cool down. They drink, but they live, in the northern U.S. and then in Canada. But if it gets above, I think it's 88 degrees Fahrenheit for too long, it will kill them. They will literally die of heat exhaustion. And so when you think about global warming and climate change, I always think of the moose. We always think of polar bears and all these other species, but I think of the moose. That's why moose are disappearing in the northern 48 states of the U.S. That's why in the Yukon. It was Yellowknife or something, not Yellowknife. It was somewhere way in the north. I looked one day and it was 98 degrees Fahrenheit one day a few summers ago. And I think of all the moose up there, like, holy smokes, they're dying or they're suffering. So, yeah, you learn all these facts about these animals and you uncover so many fascinating things, and their superpowers, like mantis shrimp are just, oh my God, they're octopus are from another world.
Oh, they're alien.
The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I believe I've even like messaged you after listening to a few episodes, being like,
Yeah.
"Dude, I had no idea. What an
Yeah.
electric eel's not actually an eel? What the hell?
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
been
And they're,
lied to."
yeah, their electric field. I mean, God, that was like episode 200. That was so much fun. Oh, and then piranha. We did them. I mean, we've done all the big species, but then you start finding these obscure ones that nobody really knows about, and bring them to life. Like lemmings, that was one we did recently. I don't know, 20 episodes ago. Do lemmings follow each other and jump off cliffs? No, they don't.
No, again,
They
we were
don't. Yeah.
lied to,
Yes, we're lied to. Yeah, all those cartoons.
and we're lied to by. Oh, do I dare say it? Was it Disney? That
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Don't even get me started on Disney. Yeah. Yeah.
sorry,
All the
Mickey, if you're
best.
listening, please
Yeah. Yeah.
don't revoke my pass.
Yes. 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 We love you, Disney. We love you. Yeah. Yeah.
All hail the mouse overlord.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Don't piss off Mickey Mouse. So.
Hey, Chris, you got a story for me?
Oh, geez, I'm trying to think of all the stories. Okay, here's one. So I've been bird shamed. Okay. So what does that mean? My buddy, because whenever I think of Mike, I always think of my buddy here, Jesse. He works at the Hamilton Zoo in New Zealand. He's American. I met him years ago in Florida, briefly, and I shook his hand, say, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you." He was friends of friends, but I didn't. When I moved here, he actually was living here, so we became really close friends. And in New Zealand, besides all the invasive species, our only native mammals are bats, land mammals. Okay, yeah, we have seals and everything else on our coast, but there was no rodents, there was no stoats, weasels, uh, all those other species that have been introduced by man or humans. So we just have this really crazy bird population that's we're known for: kiwis and kakapo and uh, pukeko and all the amazing animals we have here. So Jesse got me into bird watching because I can't go on safari in New Zealand, but I can go watch birds. He's really turned on the bird nerd in me, and I've been trying to bleed that enthusiasm in the podcast, because when you start listening and watching birds, you realize they're around you all the time. When we were just starting, you said, "Oh, I heard the birds in the background." And it was probably a myna, common myna, again, invasive species, but they're pretty prolific here and they're loud. And you start noticing all the life around you. It gets you outdoors. It's good for your mental health. And so I really took up bird watching. And so Jesse would take me around with my bins, and then there's these two wonderful apps that Cornell University Department of Ornithology puts out. There's Merlin Bird ID app, so that helps you identify the birds you're seeing, and then they have eBird, which is you're logging the birds you see, and you need accounts for those, but they're so worth it because scientists are literally taking that information and it's helping conservation. So that's why I push it so much. It's citizen science, and I liken it like it's Pokemon Go. It's like we all had the craze, and people still play it. My son still plays it. He's, "Dad, can I have your phone?" And he tries to catch Pokemon wherever we're around. But you got to catch them all. So you start building your bird list, and you start getting all your species. So right now in New Zealand, we have about 260 species of birds, and I have 101 on my list. So that's pretty good, the Century Club. But Jesse's like one off the 200 mark because it's really hard to see. A lot of them are coastal birds too, or they go out on the ocean. So over the years, Jesse and I, during COVID, and I've done some traveling in the States and Australia, and so it was like a year and a half ago. I said, "Jesse, my bird list is only at 247," and he shamed me. He said, "Chris, that's ridiculous." He's got like 1,000 birds or 1,200. I was like, oh man, you're bird shaming me. He's like, okay, buddy, we're gonna get out and we're gonna start building your list. So since he's thrown that gauntlet, I have built my bird list, and I'm over 410 now. I just caught like 60 species in the States when I was there last month in Florida. And every time I travel, I'm always out with my bins and I'm always looking for birds. So the story is I went to Papua New Guinea last year. Never in my life did I ever think I would step foot in Papua New Guinea because I looked into it, and there are parts where you shouldn't go, right? And yeah, it's got a lot of issues. It's got a lot of issues with the peoples there, and a lot of exploitation and like palm oil and cocoa, and so you have to be careful. But we a lot of Australians go to New Guinea because the New Guineans fought with them in World War II. So there's this really combined history. So I went with a big group of Australians, and we went a couple of the islands, which were amazing. But then I went to Rabaul, which I'm a big history nerd, and that was like the big Japanese base in World War II. It's New Britain's the island, and so Rabaul is the big town. So that was the big base and sea base and plane base, like Battle of Guadalcanal for the Americans, and that's where the Japanese were based. So I just really wanted to go there, but I went on this World War II tour, and my wife was pregnant, so she stayed on the ship. Every time I got out of the bus, like they're like, "Oh yeah, look at all this stuff." I'm out there with my binoculars looking for birds, right? So we went to the at the end of the tour. It was like a 4-hour tour. And at the end, we get out of our little buses. We're at the Australian cemetery there because World War I, World War II, the Aussie, the Anzacs, and the Kiwis, Indian troops, the ones that died there. So we're at the big cemetery. And I did the little ceremony, paying my respects, took my hat off and all of that because, for that's why a lot of the Aussies were there. But then I was like, my bins were out. And so the tour guide, she comes up to me. She's like, I noticed you're always looking for birds. And speaking her broken English. And I said, oh yeah, I'm always looking for birds. I'm big birds. So I show her my app. I'm like, this is my count for today. And then she's like, you should really see this one bird. It's got the big beak and they're really loud. And all of a sudden, I'm not joking. Squawk, squawk, squawk. 2 Blythe's hornbills were flying right by us. They looked like 2 crab claws. They literally, if you look up the Blythe's hornbill, really bright orangish long beaks, and it looked like 2 crab claws flying. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I just was beaming. I said, thank you. She's like, when you come back, she gave me her card. We'll take you on a proper bird tour, where they go and you leave all the cars behind and they take you up into the hills. But for me, that was like my ultimate bird sighting in a spot on Earth I never thought I would visit. So the take home story is don't be afraid to travel. And you be careful, obviously traveling, but get out and see the world, get to know other people, other cultures, and look up and start looking at the birds because they're just as charismatic and awesome as your giraffe, who I love. I love them. Elephants are my number one species, but birds are pretty fantastic.
They are. Yeah, I totally recommend that too, especially someone myself. I grew up in a small town, and I don't know if did you grow up in a small town too, or did you grow up in a city? Or
Yeah, I mean Mission Viejo, Del Mar.
okay, I grew up in, like,
down the coast of San Diego.
Central Coast, Pastoral, which is much smaller than it is now.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
know people that I grew up with that never left that town. And
Yeah,
I've been
yep,
to
yep.
all over the country. I've been to Africa. I've been to Europe. So there's so much in this world worth seeing, and like especially animals and wildlife and birds. I don't know a lot about birds, but I do love and appreciate birds. I do have a friend who's a bird nerd that I work with who, if I can get a good picture of a bird, I'll send it to him and just be like, what's this?
I do that to Jesse still. I do. Yeah.
Actually, I love when I go to a zoo. Like I go to the San Diego Zoo because they have a lot of aviaries and a lot of birds. I'll just take a picture of a random bird because you have no idea what part of the world I'm looking at. I'll send to them. I'll get like the correct response like within a minute. Like, oh, that's Eurasian, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Jesse knows. I always ask him. Like it just, and I'll say this: birds are dinosaurs. That's the thing. Like you look at them, that they evolved from dinosaurs, right? That is living dinosaurs. So when you see them, it's not just the cassowary or the emu or the ostrich. Look at their feet. But that's why we think dinosaurs had feathers, because we know that they are actually living dinosaurs. So for your children, I think it's a hobby. And I actually had to bribe my kids to go on do bird counting during COVID. I'd said, okay, $1 a bird. So we'd go out and we'd find like 20 species. I was like, oh God, I owe my boys $20 a pop. But it's New Zealand cash, so it doesn't go as far as US cash. Uh, but it's a way to get them out in nature. It's a way to get them active and looking at the animals around you.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
we had a bird fly into one of our windows yesterday.
Yeah.
So we went out and found it, and luckily it was alive, just stunned.
Yeah.
So we kind of
Stunned.
put it in
Yeah.
the box. But it's like now I'm like, I have to know what this bird is because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep.
we did our research and looked it up, and it was a lesser goldfinch.
Oh
And
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
it's a cute little bird, and
Cute.
it was
Cute.
funny
Yeah.
because it was stunned. We left it; it was in a box for like a half hour or something like
Yeah.
that, and we went out
Yeah.
and checked on it, and we got a little too close, and finally he's like, "Oh, I'm gone," and he just
It flew
darted,
away.
just took
Yeah.
off. I did have to
Yeah.
look up while you were talking the Blythe hornbill. That is a beautiful bird. I don't know if you can see that on
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally that orange reddish flying. It looked like a crab claw. I was like, oh my goodness.
That does look like a
So,
little tiny dinosaur.
oh, they are. They absolutely are. They're
And
amazing. And I'll tell you, bird behavior is fascinating. The more you look into it. So for the podcast, just put that out there. The courting behavior, the males have to work hard. They're incredible.
if you want to bird shame me, I'm gonna while you're talking. I have the eBird app.
Okay.
I have it. I want to click
Yeah.
on it.
All right. We do some comparisons. All
No,
right. So
there's no comparison. You're gonna laugh at this. All right, let's see if that'll show up. Species
28
observed.
species.
28.
Jeez.
I think I went.
That's California, right?
I think I went on one bird watching trip with my buddy that I work with, and
that's just California, and that is when I went on holiday to visit my mom, like last year, or the year before. Come on, Mike, you got to get out there, man.
I do, but yeah, this was when was this even? Like last 2023. I went on a bird watching trip in 2023, and I saw 28
That's a good
species.
day. That's a good day, actually. 28 in a day is good.
But my buddy was real psyched. We had to go out that day out to Lancaster, just up north of LA, because there were spottings of a. This is all I had learned this all this day. I had no idea. It's a tundra bean goose.
Okay.
It's like I think it's from Russia. It has
never
no
been
business being in California, let alone Southern California. So we tracked it down and we found there's a bunch of other bird watchers there. Because if there's like a rare bird, it's crazy. People come from hundreds of miles to see the bird. That is crazy. But yeah, we spotted.
In Australia, it was funny. 4 months ago, an emperor penguin washed up on shore.
Oh, wow.
In South Australia. And I told Jesse, I'm like, man, I'm so tempted to get on an airplane. And I mean, we couldn't afford it, but it just to go see an emperor penguin. Oh, I got another story for you too. But to see an emperor penguin and add that to my list without going to Antarctica is a dream. But yeah, it is. It's a passion. It's just incredible. And the more you learn about them, the more you see them, the more you appreciate them, because they're everywhere. Wherever you live, wherever you're listening, you have birds all around you.
You're right. I gotta start doing it more, especially since my actual Pokemon Go account got hacked and deleted.
There you go.
Might as well just switch to the real thing.
Yeah, it helps scientists. So yeah,
very cool.
Yeah. Okay, so this is my other cool animal sighting. I don't know why I didn't tell this one first, but I had to bring in the bird stuff. So I was here in New Zealand. You have the North Island, the South Island. North Island is, for Lord of the Ring fans, the Shire. I mean, I literally live 20 minutes from Hobbiton. And I live in the rolling green hills. That's kind of the North Island. We have a lot of the ferns and just gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. Then the South Island is Rohan, right? So the big valley, the mountains with the snow, dry shrub grass. That's the South Island of New Zealand. Now they have ferns and some really gorgeous spots too, but many of it. So I was at the bottom of the South Island for work because I was teaching here, and I was meeting with some of my colleagues down there. And so, being the bird nerd that I was going to go to this place called Kaka Point. It was just outside Dunedin. And you come to New Zealand, it is one of the most beautiful places on earth. I can say that. The only other place I think comes close for me is Vancouver Island in Canada that I've been. It's just everywhere you go, it is a postcard. So I'm driving along the beach, this really rocky shoreline to get to this lighthouse, which is facing south towards Antarctica. And it's one of the more southern points of New Zealand. And just the coastline is beautiful. I'm looking for albatross. I did see a couple albatross flying. And I pull up and I was like, no, on the beach. I'm like, no way. There's no way that is what I'm looking at. And I think I sent this to you. I don't know if I told you this or not. And I rolled down my window and I'm going to find the photo. And I called Angie right away. And I said, Angie, there is no way I'm looking at this animal. And I don't know if you would know, if you could even guess what it would have been, but we
Oh my
covered it in the
goodness.
podcast.
In New Zealand?
It is seen sporadically in New Zealand. Very rarely is it's
Do I get
and I
any
just
clues?
okay,
Is it native?
no, it's not.
No.
It's native to Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
And I literally, if I come back as any creature, it's this one.
Oh, that's well, obviously it's a seal. It's a
Yeah.
uh,
Come on,
uh
hoof and
seal.
stock guy.
I know there's no hooves. There's yeah,
No,
that
that's
is
got spots.
a
What animal never
spotted.
loses their?
Is it a
No, they never lose their
leopard seal?
leopards. Yes, yes.
Points.
It was a freaking leopard seal hauled out on the beach. They're randomly they'll come up this far north, but they live in Antarctica. That was one of my favorite species we covered. They live in Antarctica. They don't have a lot of predators. Really, orcas are the only thing that might mess with them. And like if you're going to come back as an animal, that's what I want to come back as, because you have your big swimming pool. There's plenty of food, penguins and other things to eat. Crab, they can filter feed. And yeah, I saw a leopard seal hauled out on the beach just resting, and I was like, no way, because it's a really rare sighting in New Zealand.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to see that wild animal that swam, because New Zealand is, compared to Antarctica, it's a lot further north than, say, the southern tip of South America. It's a lot farther north. And the south coast of Australia is a lot farther north. That's like, I don't know, it's 10,000 miles or something between us and Antarctica. It's really, really far. And to see something native to Antarctica hauled out on the beach was pretty incredible. You know, that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, that reminds me when I went to Hawaii and seeing the Hawaiian monk seals on the beach there.
Very endangered. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did an episode on those too, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Very endangered. Midway Island, like all those Hawaiian islands, because of all, not only just the warming oceans, but all the plastic that's there, you know, just suffocating them. Yeah, they're in big trouble.
You're a downer, man. Every time
but hey, you know what? Do you want some good stories? Okay, here's good stories. There are people like Mike who go in every day and take care of these endangered species and educate the public. So that's why I'm a big believer in zoos. Zoos
I know that guy.
Zoos pour a lot into conservation. There is a lot of good going on in the world. It's hard to see it, but again, after interviewing 150 something people that work, a lot of them work in conservation. We know now today a lot more on how we tackle some of these issues like poaching. How do we go into these, countries? We don't go in there. It's empowering the governments to do something about it. And it's just the face of conservation has changed a lot. And there's a lot of good projects ongoing, and people are fighting hard for these animals that they are recovering. species are recovering, but there's a lot of work to be done. So,
Yeah, I was just talking about this with one of my recent guests that you talk to so many conservationists, and it may seem when you look at conservation as a whole like very like negative, a lot of negativity, like a lot of like these animals are dying and stuff. But these conservationists you talk to, they wouldn't be doing the work they're doing if they didn't think that there's
mhm.
was hope in saving these animals and keeping them
Yeah.
around for
Hmm.
generations and generations. I mean, I guess we're a very optimistic group, even
Hmm.
though a lot of
Well,
the
I mean,
the facts that we
yeah,
shoot out are can be kind of negative. But
yeah,
it's a tough world to live in, for these
yeah. And
animals.
you've been on the ground. You were on the ground in Africa,
Oh
and
yeah,
working side by side, Julian, and and that's important. That's an important point you make, because every species we cover, there is an organization or a group of organizations fighting for those animals or the spaces they live in. Hippos was the only one we came across. We still joke about it. You could start a hippo organization, save the hippos, not the pygmies because they're endangered, but the big African, Nile River hippos. They don't have an organization fighting for them because they're doing okay.
yeah, in
Uh,
Africa and South America, right?
yeah, I know. The Escobar hippos, they're endangered. Those ones are endangered, and they don't need to be there. They just need to they need to sterilize them all so they don't breed. But I'll tell you what, Vaquita porpoise, there's one that will
Oh
go
yeah,
extinct. That's
I mean,
it's over for them. It is. It's sad. They will go extinct. There's maybe 10 left. There was a big effort to corral them, but they're porpoises. They get stressed easier. So when they put them in those ocean pens, I mean, plenty of room for them to swim, but they were so stressed out they died. The two or three that they brought in, and they said, nope, we can't do it, because porpoise are just a little bit more skittish than, say, dolphins. So that's a species that sadly we're watching go extinct. The northern white rhino, I have friends, you probably have friends working on that project too. The repro stuff. So,
yeah,
I was
there's
working with
still
some of
hope
them.
for them, but there's only two surviving females left, so all the hope
Yeah,
for their future is in the lab. So
I yeah, I think that species is going to go extinct. Like, it's just, they can make some embryos. We can transfer them into the southern white rhinos. That's what they're working on, because when I was in it years ago, we didn't have that technology, didn't have the funding, but now they have the funding. So a couple of my friends that work on that project, they said, sadly, we think the northerns probably will go extinct, but the techniques we're learning is going to go a long way in helping preserve black rhinos, Sumatran, Javan, and Indian, all these other species that are under the gun. Southern whites are doing great. The southern white rhinos are doing okay, stable. There is poaching, but it's at sustainable levels, which you take that as it is. But
right, but you're
the
talking about
jaw,
the Sumatran and the Javan rhinos in Indonesia.
yeah,
There's
they're
fewer
yeah,
than 100, fewer than 50 Javan
yeah,
rhinos.
yeah.
They're
Here's
barely
another
hanging
story
on.
for you. What's his name? Hombre, not hombre. It's Hairpin.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, at White Oak. I got to see him and get up close personal with him, because he was born at Cincinnati Zoo, right? I'm correct.
they all were born in Cincinnati Zoo. Yeah,
Yeah, Hairpin. So here again, zoos. This is why I defend you guys. Cincinnati Zoo, you have this species where there's maybe 50 left in the world. And Hairpin was born at the Cincinnati Zoo. He was transferred down to Florida. That's where I got to see him. And then he was sent back to Indonesia to help save his species. And so now he's in Bomas. Again, why zoos are important, because now we know that we can bring some of these wild animals in and care for them and protect them, because there's 40, 50 left. They still get poached and they've lost a lot of their habitat. But Hairpin, born in a zoo, is now, he was living in the wild. I think they brought him in and a couple others as they try to breed them and kind of keep them under semi rural human care.
right.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
amazing the work. I should see if I could anyone at Cincinnati could want to hop on and talk about it. That's an amazing story because
yeah,
most rhinos. You think about breeding rhinos. Some most species you put a male and female together, they'll make more rhinos. But
yeah,
Sumatran rhinos are a lot more trickier, and they weren't
yeah,
breeding for decades. And Cincinnati
yeah,
Zoo figured out through
yeah.
doing like blood draws and hormonal
Mm.
studies
Mm.
with the females that you have to introduce the male and female at just the right time and then separate
Mm.
them right after they breed. And
Yeah.
that usually leads to success. And they had, I think,
Yeah.
2001, they had the first
Yeah.
ever Sumatran rhino born in a zoo,
Yeah.
first over in 112 years. That was Andalus, who
Mm.
later came to LA, and I got to work with him.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That
That's
was
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's only 50 of them left in the world. So think about how priceless that animal is. You can't put a price on that. That is a species. We only have 50 left, and you have one of them that is so critical to the survival of that species.
right. And
And
all those
yeah.
rhinos that were born in Cincinnati are now
Mm.
back at
Yeah.
Campus in Indonesia
Yeah.
using the
Yeah.
exact same techniques to breed, and they've had success
Mm.
breeding
Yeah.
there. So there's
Yeah.
definitely is an optimistic story when it comes to
Yes.
conservation that you could look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. Yeah. There is. There is. India, when you look at India, that's something we covered last year. Their tigers are rebounding. Their Asiatic lions are rebounding. They're looking to reintroduce cheetah because cheetah was there. Their conservation that's going on in India is really good. Nepal is doing phenomenal. Bhutan's doing phenomenal. There's a lot of good going on. New Zealand, Australia, very focused on our wild animals, and we're fighting hard for them. So,
It's amazing how much success you can have when the government shows an interest and gets involved in
oh
protecting
yeah,
these animals.
yeah,
Because talking with Julian Fennessy from Giraffe Conservation Foundation, there's so many different countries in Africa, and they've had
yeah,
success in many countries, but to achieve that success, you need governmental support, and that's hard to
yeah.
get in some
It
countries.
Well, just think it's ecotourism too. I mean, you've been on the ground there. I've only
Yeah,
been to Egypt, so I haven't been on safari or out in the bush like you have. But don't you have a feeling that ecotourism is a driver of that? Because I do want to
definitely.
get to Africa, and it's to go on a safari and see animals. So that's ecotourism.
Oh
I
yeah,
want to spend my money there. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. You want foreign money in your country, you're gonna get a lot
yeah,
more with hundreds of
yeah,
tourists coming to shoot your
mm,
animals with cameras instead of one
yeah.
coming to shoot them with a gun.
Shoot. Yeah, exactly. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, ecotourism is a big driver of that. You need it. Bob Poole. Yeah, I don't know if you know Bob Poole. He was he helped direct Secrets of Elephants. We had him on the podcast, and his sister, I forgot her name. She's Dr. Poole. She's the one that kind of was one of those that discovered elephants had subsonic sound.
Okay, yeah,
I think I remember reading her book, or it was her mentor's book, where the way she discovered it was she had to build a hide in the water at a pond, right? And she had to build this big concrete hide so the elephants wouldn't be scared. And she was in there, and the elephants would come to drink, and she literally felt her bones vibrate, and she didn't know what was going on. They weren't moving; they were drinking, but they were that subsonic vocalization that they have that we can't hear. She felt it. So then she brought out some equipment and measured it. And then we discovered elephants have a whole secret language,
yeah. It's
that,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, he said, because I always said, well, God, Bob, we're worried about travel and carbon. And he said, look, you need to come to Africa. That's the only way we're going to save these animals is if people come to Africa and spend the money to go on safari and support these local economies and support the governments, like you said. And so I always remember that. And that was a few years ago when I spoke with him. And yeah, travel, please travel, whether you do it locally, within the US or wherever you live in the world, get out and experience the world because it will change you.
Definitely, yeah. Even the U.S. I know
Yeah.
Americans get a bad rap for not traveling internationally, but
Yeah.
U.S. is
It is
so
big.
big,
It
and
is big.
just California itself, man. From
Mm.
we have
Yeah.
beaches, deserts, mountains.
Mm.
Yosemite is probably the most
Mm.
beautiful places I've ever been to.
Yep. Yep.
The
Gorgeous.
redwoods, sequoias. I mean, that's just one state. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we try to
And
travel,
Washington.
all
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, just north. You have Oregon and Washington. There's so much you can see in our country, but
Yeah.
I do have a passport though. I do get out and see
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah. I
places.
mean, I don't know what it is with Americans, because it is such a massive country. But yeah, I mean, get out to the national parks. It shows the government that you want to support them. Always support your local communities. Then get out in nature, and there's so much vibrant wildlife in the U.S. It's incredible.
I agree. So yeah, this has been fun, man. It's been too long since I got to just sit down
I
and
know.
chat with you. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, that's it. I keep going. It's like me and Mike, hour 3 of the podcast.
It'll be a
Yeah,
4-part episode.
yeah, I know. But it is good to catch up with you. And, now that the borders are, I'll be back in California. Last time I couldn't because my schedule was so full. But next time I come to California, I'm definitely coming to LA Zoo and I'm going to come hang out with you for a little bit and feed your giraffes with you. That's always a treat.
I might let you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I'll also have to pay like all the other visitors. That's fine. I'll do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll do it again. We'll do it
Yeah,
again.
Mike.
We'll
I
do
mean,
it on my
yeah,
when I
yeah.
get to 400 episodes. I'll have you back on.
Yeah, well, yeah, when I get to 2,000 episodes, we'll revisit that episode 200. No, yeah, no, I would love to catch up with you again, with the conservation work with giraffes because, we just, one of the things we're doing is, we did giraffe in episode 12 or 14 or something in the podcast. We go back, we pick a specific species to expand upon it. And in our reticulated giraffe that we released a few months ago, I definitely mentioned you. And yeah, keep up the good work with them because it is that silent extinction that they're going through, and it's good to maybe like having you and Julian on together in a couple months.
Oh, he wouldn't want that.
I know, probably not, but we could try it and but just talk about where we are with giraffe around the world, and then some of these other species that you take care of and you teach people about. I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, for sure, we'll do it again soon.
Fantastic. Love it, man. All right. It's good
All
seeing you.
right.
Take care.
Yeah. Enjoy sunshine. I mean, it's summer here in New Zealand, so hot and humid for us.
It's LA. It's always summer here.
Yeah, every day. Yeah. That's home. So,
Yeah. All
all
right.
right.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Yeah.
See? So easy.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Easy.
wasn't recording.
All right. Well, tomorrow, yeah.
Want to give a big thanks to Chris Mortensen for joining the Wild Tales podcast. It really was a joy to catch up with my old friend and have a nice chat and tell some stories. That's why I started this podcast. It's just an excuse for me to chat with my friends who now live on the other side of the planet. It was crazy trying to even schedule this interview, this chat, because the time zones. He's like a day ahead, but 3 hours back. Like 5 o'clock my time is 2 o'clock his time. The next day ahead. I don't know. He's living in the future. I don't know how it works. I don't understand time zones. But hey, I encourage everyone to listen to Chris and his partner Angie on the All Creatures podcast. Again, it's a great podcast. They've done over 400 episodes. So start anywhere. You can start at the beginning. You can start at 228, my episode, or start at their most recent episode. A lot of great information, fun way to learn about new animals, and learn some fun facts to impress your friends with. Hey, follow me. Follow Wild Tales on social media at Wild Tales Pod on Instagram, at Wild Tales on Blue Sky. You can email the podcast at wildtalespod@gmail.com. That's Tales, Tails. It's a pun. Just go with it, please. And hey, I started a Substack now. There's just so many social media platforms. It's hard to keep up with. But now you're going to search for Wild Tales on Substack, and you can find all the episodes there to listen to. And I'm trying to add my own additional stories that relate to each episode. So there's a little additional content you can get on the Wild Tales Substack. So please check it out. Send me a message. Let me know you're listening. Rate and review on all your favorite podcast platforms. If you're giving me a 5-star, if you don't like it, then just forget you ever listened. But please, if you enjoyed what you heard, recommend it to your friends and come back again in 2 weeks. I release every other Thursday, and it's a joy talking to my guests, telling stories, and I really appreciate the positive feedback from my listeners, and I'm just happy you're out there listening. So until next time, stay wild, my friends.